The history of the Air Training Corps is one crowned with achievements.
Born out of the darkest days of conflict, it has evolved into an organisation that works within the spirit of the Royal Air Force to teach young people that there are no limits, no boundaries, and that truly anything is possible. For 75 years, 2214 Usworth Squadron, near to Sunderland in North East England, has been a proud part of the Corps' history. Through the war years and into the jet age, 2214 Usworth Squadron, along with hundreds of others all over the country, has been privileged to help shape and guide generations of cadets.
The accomplishments of the Air Training Corps are the achievements of its squadrons, and those successes have come from individuals who have dared to push personal boundaries and refused to accept any limits.
In 2016, the Air Training Corps proudly celebrated its 75th year. For over 7 decades, it has worked alongside the Royal Air Force, teaching and training young people and offering adventures and opportunities that few on the outside could imagine.
The history of 2214 Usworth Squadron Air Training Corps is tied to the history of the former Royal Flying Corps, later RAF airfield, that once occupied the site of its headquarters.
The first aircraft based here were in 1916 when the Royal Flying Corps number 36 Squadron was based here for the air defence of the North East. And they were tasked with anti-Zeppelin patrols. Not an easy task in the early aeroplanes with no radio contact with the ground or anything like that. Well, in 1930 the airfield was reactivated by the RAF and it became known as RAF Usworth. And that was formed to house number 607 County Durham Squadron of the then new Auxiliary Air Force. And that built up as a 2-seater bomber squadron, then changed to a 2-seater fighter squadron. And they were reformed at Usworth after the Battle of France. And then went on to fight the Battle of Britain here with the Hurricanes.
By the end of spring 1940, the fight against Nazi Germany had retreated to the English Channel. British forces had been evacuated in the famous Dunkirk operation, and Great Britain stood virtually alone against the enemy.
What General Weygand has called the Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
.607 County Durham Squadron, based at RAF Usworth, would play a crucial part in the defence of Britain, with one of its pilots later playing a pivotal role in the early days of the Air Training Corps.
607 Squadron had been fighting in the Battle of Britain down south, and they were brought back for a rest and re-equipment. And while they were up here, the Germans attempted the major raid on the northeast, known as Black Thursday, the 15th of August. And they tried a major attack from Holland and Norway against what they thought was the undefended northeast. Unfortunately, there was Spitfires at Catterick, there was Hurricanes here with 607 Squadron, and some other squadrons at Acklington. And they intercepted and caused serious damage to the German Luftwaffe at the time. The leader of the squadron at that time was Squadron Leader Francis Blackadder, who was an ace from France and increased his score on the August 15th raid.
After the war, Squadron Leader Francis Blackadder went on to become the commanding officer of the Northumberland wing of the Air Training Corps. Battle of Britain was pivotal. If the RAF had not been able to defeat the Luftwaffe, the way would have been left open for an invasion of English shores, and the course of the Second World War could have been very different.
With incredibly stretched resources, the RAF had achieved a historic victory. The immediate threat had passed, but lessons had been learned, and it was quickly realised that more pilots and support staff would prove essential if the war was to be won.
Earlier, Air Commodore Adrian Chambers Forsyth had identified the crucial role that the Royal Air Force would play in the coming conflict, laying the ground for the Air Training Corps and the formation of 2214 Usworth Squadron.
Originally it was the Air Defence Cadet Corps, 1938, and then in 1941, after the Battle of Britain of course, when we found out we were a bit short of pilots, February the 5th, 1941 came into being official Royal Charter. Interestingly enough, we found out about our first air cadet, who was Alfred Ibbotson. Actually got a photograph in the local newspaper, Sunderland Echo, of them actually signing up prior to that date, and he was in Usworth Squadron. Later went into the RAF, obviously with the war on, came out and later on came back to the squadron and eventually became the officer in charge. Originally it was Castletown and District Squadron. We know that because we have a stamp from one of the inside of the books, which was a district of Sunderland, adjacent to Usworth. But obviously RAF Usworth is where they did all their flying, and eventually they moved house in the early 50s and became, and eventually take over the name of Usworth.
By the end of the war, the Air Training Corps had firmly established itself as a partner to the Royal Air Force, with 2214 Squadron sharing space at Usworth Airfield, teaching boys about flying and discipline and providing an essential grounding for those who may wish to join. For the RAF and the Air Training Corps, this geographic proximity proved mutually beneficial.
The headquarters was just over the road to RAF Usworth, and a succession of squadrons came and went, obviously fighter squadrons during the war. They had their own navigation squadrons who were looking for basically what you call ballast to put in the back of things like Avro Ansons, which cadets fitted the bill nicely.
As part of the 75-year celebrations, it seemed only fitting that today's cadets should learn something of the squadron's history. The Royal Air Force Museum at Hendon, London, proved to be the ideal location.
Like the headquarters of 2214 Usworth Squadron, Air Training Corps, the museum is based on a former wartime airfield and is particularly appropriate in that in its collection is the very Hurricane that was flown by Francis Blackadder of 607 Squadron from Usworth during the Battle of Britain.
Our squadron meets on what used to be an airfield before they built Nissan all over it. So to show them what aircraft actually operated from here.
I don't really have that much knowledge on planes, so coming here has really been an eye-opener. I've been reading all the little tags and everything, but I studied A-level history, and it's nice to see a different perspective from the point of the Air Force and the different planes. They don't just have the British planes, and to compare them and how they've evolved is really good, yeah.
I've seen many aircraft, but I've also seen how RAF aircraft have developed over the years, how they've learned, how things have gone wrong, how they've motivated themselves to achieve this stuff. I've seen how First World War I was different from World War II, and what happened after that.
Looking back at all the squadrons and the airfields that squadrons across the country are based at, we can't forget our history and our ancestry, because some of the squadrons in the country are based off squadrons that fought in the past. So there's definitely, you've got to remember what we were formed to do. The cadets were formed as the Air Cadet Defence Organisation to help during the Blitz and the Battle of Britain, so we can't forget that.
They join, and they might come various different schools and various places, but when they join, they have joined the squadron, and that's their squadron. So obviously the history is their history as well, and actually while they're in there, they are making the squadron's history.
As the role of RAF Usworth ebbed and flowed, the airfield was temporarily dormant after the war. 2214 Squadron Air Training Corps adapted to each new incarnation.
Reopened again in 1946 with the Havilland Chipmunks for the University Air Squadron. Then Avro Hansen navigational trainers to train navigators right through the 50s.
In 1958, RAF Usworth was finally closed and the Air Training Corps were left alone. Where once hurricanes had taken off to fight the enemy, now there was silence. The expansive site dark, except for 2 huts in its northern corner, illuminated every Tuesday and Thursday evening. The loss to the Air Cadet Squadron was keenly felt.
Well, it would be having an arm cut off, I suppose, because the relationship was so close and it was so handy. If anything was needing to be done, obviously cadets could do it.
So what of the cadets in these earlier years? Initially only open to boys until the more enlightened 1980s, when girls were allowed to join the ranks of the Air Training Corps. 2214 Squadron presented a wealth of opportunities to an inquiring mind, and having your own airbase was definitely a bonus.
I started from school, and my friends joined the 111 Squadron at Sunderland, and then I went with them to Sunderland, and then we realised that the 2214 Squadron here got lots of flying in at the airfield, you see, with the university squadrons. So we decided that we wanted to go flying.
I think probably when I joined I was about 13. And the reason for joining really was the activities such as the shooting of guns, the flying, the gliding, and I suppose when you're a young guy like that, the uniform.
I started in 2214 Squadron when I was 14 years and 2 months. And how that happened was that I came from Castletown, which the squadron was originally formed as Castletown Squadron, and Mr. Alf Ibbotson, Flight Lieutenant Ibbotson, was the CEO of the squadron at the time, and he was the manager of the co-op stores in Castletown. And my mother used to visit the co-op stores in Castletown. My mother was of the old school that anything that, as she would say, kept me off the streets had to be a good thing. So the Scouts, the Church Youth Club and the ATC. So she was very keen for me to be in organised activities where, as she said, kept me off the streets and gave me an interest in life rather than hanging around street corners. So it was my mother was the big influence in all of this.
The reason I joined was that I lived at Penshaw, Old Penshaw, and I used to see somebody walking down twice a week in uniform. And in the war, what happened was he was a Flight Sergeant Freddie Jenkins. And I used to see him walking down, and then I joined in Sir Fred, you know.
When I was at school, I saw some literature on the Air Force, which was at one of the school open days, liked the look of it. Went down to my local RAF careers office, who suggested that, being I was 13 at the time, that I come and check out the local Air Training Corps squadron. And there we go, history.
It impressed me that they were all in nice, pristine uniforms. There was the excitement of we were guaranteed we'd go flying, we'd go shooting, we'd go to annual camps, and it was a prelude to joining the RAF. And I was interested in aircraft, and perhaps at that time, interested in joining the RAF when I was probably 16, 17-year-old, but that didn't happen. But I think the first thing was how organised it was.
These reasons, despite the passage of time, are remarkably consistent, and cadets today share the same motivations.
I joined because I realised that I could go flying, shooting, go to all the different RAF bases, come to places like the RAF Museum here. I realised I could be like a leader eventually by like being ranked up, corporal and that, and then I eventually want to join the RAF later on in my career. So I thought like best place to start was the Air Cadets.
Well, when I first walked in, I had to go to the office. I needed to sign things. I got my uniform, and then I needed to get used to it a little bit, making friends. It was just a little bit quiet at the first night.
At first I had no intention of joining. I'd been to the air show previously many times, but my sister had an interest. She'd seen the stall at the air show and she came along, and I came for moral support, and then the CEO just spoke to me as if I was joining. I thought, I might give it a try, and I've just stayed ever since. I've loved it every minute.
My brother was in the cadets before I was in, because he's 3 years older than me, and I just thought I'd give it a go.
I had an interest in planes, and when I was at the air show about 2 or 3 years ago, it caught my eye, and I've always wanted to be in the air cadets, and that's why I joined. I was really nervous because I joined by myself. I didn't really know anybody, and I wasn't that good at making friends, but I found a lot of friends making there as well.
I just think back to when I started and how it felt for me. So get them in the door, give them a tour, tell them what we do, tell them many things that you can do, not only in your cadet life, but then to further it in your cadet life. I know people that's went on to join the RAF and flying and whatever they've done. So to get them in the door, to give them the opportunity to do everything. There's lots of things out there that cadets can do, and if they want to do it, then they can do it.
There's a lot of camaraderie goes on. There's a lot of team sports go on, team building. You're in a class with the same age group, with the same level that you're learning in your classes. So you move through with those people and they become good friends, but you also get the opportunity to mix in with other squadrons. Particularly myself, I was involved with some sports, with swimming and hockey, and I got the chance to represent both the wing and the region for those sports, and I met lots of diverse people.
The vivid recollection I have is of the hut, which is not there now. The RAF station at RAF Usworth had stopped being an RAF station by that time in 1959 when I joined. But the huts that the squadron were housed in was the old medical centre, RAF huts, and there were lots of other huts around, but they were all boarded up and eventually pulled down, as was the hut that we were in. But from 1959 when I joined till about 1970 when we got a new hut, that was our accommodation. And my vivid memory about that is that the heating was standard, what you'd think as cowboy stoves, the cast iron stoves with a funnel running out of it. I remember in 1963, which was a very harsh winter, we would all be huddled round those stoves. You get about 10 cadets in a room, all huddled around the stoves, either with their greatcoats on or just within striking distance of the stove. And that was the entire heating. So that was a treasured memory of the old hut. You know, it was really Spartan days in those days.
One of the rooms was actually converted into a cafe. In half time, we always used to have OXO. And somebody should be delegated, right? You were serving at night, you make the OXO, and I think it would be £2 a cup or something like that, you know. And that was one of the highlights of the evening, that the OXO.
It was rifle drill. We had the Royal Enfield 303. We did rifle drill a lot, and then we did quite a lot of the aircraft recognition, and also we did lectures, especially about nuclear war, because at that time it wasn't a matter of will there be a nuclear war, it was when will there be a nuclear war. And I said, when will it be? Oh, it'd be next week. In actual fact, the Daily Express had said, put an headline on about there would be nuclear war within a fortnight.
You can protect yourself and your family. And later on, we will show you what steps to take.
Fortunately, the predictions of the Daily Express proved inaccurate, and the cadets of 2214 Usworth Squadron Air Training Corps were not required to duck and cover.
However, in January 1971, a Royal Air Force V-wing bomber did give great cause for concern.
The Vulcan had technical difficulties, should we say, and the crew had to abandon the aircraft. At a Vulcan that's very difficult because the 3 back passengers have to evacuate through the entrance door underneath.
The pilot tried to get it back to the base, but obviously the fire became so severe, the rest of the crew bailed out over Northumberland. It was him and the co-pilot was left when they got to Durham, and then it became worse, and he thought he's not going to make it, so the co-pilot ejected.
Well, I was a teacher at Wingate School at the time, and we were in the playground, and we could hear this pop, pop, pop sort of a sound, and we all looked up. The kids said, "Look, sir!" And there was this Vulcan bomber, and it was coming over, and it was quivering, and it was pop, 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 pop.
He then steered it out to sea, and then ejected. But somehow, as is often the case with these things, the aircraft came around and came over Wingate and went in full pelt into the ground.
The crash at Wingate was the only known occasion where the 3 back men actually got out of the Vulcan. The pilot and co-pilot have ejector seats, but the 3 other crew don't. So the Wingate crash was the only known example where everybody managed to get out.
The kids wanted to go and have a look at it because the headmaster came out and said, you know, he knew what he'd been contacted. So he said, everybody back in the classrooms. So we missed seeing the actual details. Fortunately, we found out that nobody had been killed. I mean, not many people actually see an aircraft crashing. It was dead exciting. Yeah. And we thought the pilot was being very brave. I think he got an Air Force Cross or something for it because he was heading out to sea, but he never quite made it.
After the lucky escape of the Vulcan's crew and of former cadet Joe Bush's pupils came the clear-up. Once again, local resources were called into play.
From our logbook, which was meticulously kept in the 60s, well, even in the 70s, it was 1971, the RAF actually asked them to come and help pick up bits of Vulcan bomber from the fields of what you call a FOD sweep. And they went down there, the boss of the squadron went down with a party of cadets, because it's actually appeared in the local press, to go down and pick pieces up, bits of paper, things like that.
1971 proved an even more eventful year. As the RAF lost a Vulcan bomber, the cadets gained a new headquarters, saying goodbye to the cowboy stoves forever.
With great pomp and ceremony, the new headquarters built on the existing site were opened.
Of the many adventures that the Air Training Corps has offered and continues to offer, there is one that ranks above all others.
Flying. In earlier days, this was remarkably easy to arrange.
In the summertime, if we saw aircraft flying, ask them if there's any flying going on, and we usually managed to get flights in then, yeah. See, the pilots, there were lads who they didn't give a damn, you know. They'd been in the war, they'd been in the Korean War, and they were, you know, carefree. So if you asked them, yes, you didn't come, and then they would try to make you sick and tiger moths doing aerobatics, you see. Because if you were sick in a tiger moth, you had to clean it up afterwards, you know, because we got to know them quite well, yeah.
Usworth was a quiet station, you know, there wasn't much going on there. But what, apparently, I understand from what happened after the war, the RAF lost a lot of pilots and aircraft due to stupidity. Apparently what happened was pilots were not used to during the war doing air raids and things, getting away with it. They got bored. Along Usworth, past Usworth, the railway couldn't. And one of the lads that used to train, obviously the ex-wartime pilot, he was bored. And we used to go up and come down, and if the train was coming on, we couldn't. He'd dive it and go straight for it, and just hop over it. You know, and say it just for hell of it.
We used to do our air experience flying in Chipmunks up at RAF Euston in Northumberland, and they were tandem-seater aircraft. And the very first time, I was so excited. You get kitted out with a parachute. You're told to climb on the step only on a certain section, climbing onto the cockpit. The cadet was allowed to sit in the front of the seat, and the pilot was behind, and then he'd take you up. initially at 14-year-old, just to be flying, you know, in a twin-seater aircraft was amazing. You were only up about 3,000 or 4,000 feet, but to look down and to see all the hills, and it was absolutely amazing experience. As I got older and as you got more experienced, my abiding memory and thrill was for the pilot to say, right, what do you want to do? And so you sat in the front and you say, I'd like to do some aerobatics, please, sir. So, great. And that was wonderful for him because, you know, air experience, he'd be fed up with just flying up, flying around and landing again. So it's when he got a cadet who says, I'd like to do some aerobatics, sir. So barrel rolls, loop-the-loops and these things.
When I got up there, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to get in the aircraft and get flying. So when we got up, the pilot said, all right, we're just going to do a bit of aerobatics. I was like, all right, okay. So we'd done loops and barrel rolls and stall turn.
I got the opportunity to fly in a couple of different aircraft. I never got to go in a helicopter, but I did get to go in the training aircraft like the Chipmunk and the Bulldog, that sort of thing. But I also got to go up in a Hercules on a quick up and down flight, and it's magic. There's nothing like it.
The most brilliant experience ever. And we got back down and I thought I shouldn't have ate that sandwich before I went up, and then had to be a little bit sick. So yeah, but it was the most fun I'd ever had.
Today's flying takes place from RAF Leeming in North Yorkshire, and while the aircraft and procedures have changed, the thrill is as keen as ever.
Absolutely nervous. I'm not a very big fan of roller coasters, so that's what I compared it to. And I thought, oh my god, if they give me control, I'm not going to be able to cope. But it was very good.
Well, you would get suited up and you would walk to the plane. And then you would just kind of taxi, getting shown what all the instruments were, and then you would be off. And once you take control of the plane, your nerves start kicking.
So it's very friendly, talks you through how he's going to fly and everything. You get into the air and you think, oh, I'm not really going that fast, 200 miles an hour, and then you think, I'm going really fast. And then when you take control, you think, oh my god, I'm not going to be able to cope. I was 16, 17 the first time, and I thought, I can't even drive a car yet. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to take control of a plane. But it just talks you through, you have control now, and it tells you what to do.
I didn't really want to take control because I didn't really trust myself. But I don't know, I felt great taking control of an aeroplane.
It was really nerve-wracking, but it was great. I would go again.
After the loss of RAF Usworth, 2214 Squadron Air Training Corps had to develop a new relationship and work alongside Sunderland Airport that operated with mixed success between 1962 and 1984.
One abiding memory for the cadets and the local population of Sunderland alike was the Air Days, an annual event and forerunner to the Sunderland International Air Show.
During these summer days, the old wartime airfield would spring back to life to welcome aircraft old and new, the cadets forming an integral part of the day, marshalling and selling programmes.
Just as today's air show is a wonderful recruiting ground for the Air Training Corps, so it was at the Sunderland Air Day. Highly visible parades and cadets seen supporting the local community. This support of the public continues today, 2214 Usworth Squadron taking every opportunity to help out and be seen, an integral part of teaching citizenship and responsibility.
Thank you very much indeed. That's very good. It's decent to see somebody smart.
Just like that tennis, game on to
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So today we're here to celebrate the 75th year of the Air Training Corps and 2214 Usworth.
We go flying with the RAF in tutors, but we also get the opportunity to go gliding whenever it's operating.
Most recently, a visit to Washington Fire Station was organised to further galvanise the bond between the cadets and the community.
The officer in charge and the firelights in the back will be putting the fire kit on.
We think it's important as a fire service to invite the community into the fire stations. There are barriers that I think we're trying to overcome now. They're a community fire station. They're here for the people in the community. We have rooms on the station that they can use free of charge, and it's important to get youngsters like the air cadets involved to be able to pass on important fire safety messages. If there's any kids who are of the track that they want to start fires, we can sort of nip that in the bud and explain to them why it's dangerous to put malicious calls in and things like that. So it's very important to us as a fire service to be able to get groups like this into the fire service and show them what we actually do.
What you don't want to do is take that away to an incident and shout, give you lots of pressure, because football brain will just boost up the pressure.
Most youngsters are keen to see the fire appliances, to see a squirt a bit of water around. But I don't think they would have any idea of what technical equipment that we carry now. How that the vehicles are all have CCTV, for instance, that will have laptop computers in the front, sat navs, all of those sort of things. And so I think when they do come, we're happy to show them and let them squirt a bit of water. But I think they'll go away thinking, didn't realise they had that sort of gear on the fire appliances, and how technical and how involved you've got to be as a firefighter to be competent on using all of that equipment. We do rope rescue incidents, we'll have special service incidents with animals, RSPCA get involved, horses in ditches, things like that. So we do all sorts. So I think it's just important that we'll get that message across, that we're not just here as a fire service, that we can offer all sorts of other expertise as well.
In 1977, an exciting new development arrived, literally on 2214 Usworth Squadron's doorstep, when dedicated local enthusiasts created the North East Air Museum.
Located next door to the squadron's headquarters, the Air Museum opened up wonderful new opportunities for learning and hands-on experience with many different aircraft types.
Obviously the aircraft were in various states of repair, and they would help even if just polishing the type of aircraft. We have photographs, because we have a log who actually photographs in showing this. So the links was established from the word go, really.
Perhaps the most exciting moment came in January 1983, when once again a Vulcan bomber entered the region's aviation folklore.
The Aircraft Museum made some initial inquiries about what's happening with the Vulcans when they retire. And I received a phone call at work one day from the control tower saying the RAF had been on the phone and they were going to bring a Vulcan to try and see whether it would land or not. Being the 1st of April, we were a bit suspicious. It took a full day of phoning around RAF bases to find out who made the call, but it was true. And the following Monday, the RAF had a practice to see whether a Vulcan could land at the airport. We were then scheduled to get a Vulcan, but the Falklands War broke out, so it was 2 years later that the Vulcans actually did become surplus requirements. And our museum was the first museum to be given a Vulcan, which flew up from RAF Waddington, did one fly past and then landed, put his parachute out when he landed, but the court of the place, we didn't need the parachute, but it looked good anyway, and it wasn't going to be used again. The other amusing incident on the landing was a photographer from one of the newspapers had set up on the grass to get a good photograph of it turning. He was warned not to be there. And when the pilot or the navigator has a periscope to look behind him, and as they were turning around, they could see this man cartwheeling across the grass.
In 1995, the cadets at Usworth took the opportunity to raise funds for the squadron, making innovative use of the museum's Vulcan.
We had the idea of, well, something like a car wash, but on a bigger scale, so we did a sort of a Vulcan wash with the aid of a fire engine from the young firefighters from the fire service, and obviously a lot of help from B&Q with mops and such like. It was televised and obviously raised funds for the squadron. We have photographs that appeared in the Air Cadet magazine as well.
Sadly, the arrival of Vulcan XL-319 was the last significant aircraft movement at Sunderland Airport, and in May 1984, all flying ceased.
After 68 years, the runways were finally silenced, and RAF Usworth, along with its civilian successor, was consigned to the history books. Throughout its history, the Air Training Corps has worked closely with its Royal Air Force parent, offering exciting opportunities to inquisitive minds. This has never been more apparent than at the many summer camps at RAF bases.
It was an amazing experience. I mean, just the thought of going to an RAF station and being able to see real aircraft, to actually fly in real aircraft, to live in the same accommodation that airmen lived in, was so exciting. You know, 2 weeks before we used to go, I couldn't sleep. You know, and the camps always came up to expectation. I mean, we had some camps which were out in the wilds. RAF Kinloss, right up in the Highlands of Scotland, RAF Machrihanish, round by Glasgow, right down to Portsmouth.
I went to 2 camps. First camp was Leconfield, which was a coastal command station. Now that was operational, and they were flying Shackletons from there. It was also a central gunnery school, and so I had to go on the guns and took it down the station, and from there we visited other stations. We used to fly over to other stations and fly back, you know, which was great, you know, experience.
You managed to have a look around the RAF bases, see how things were set up. Saw the aircraft, which was great, saw them flying, and the NAFI and the FUD was always good in the RAF stations as well.
In the 70s, the whole squadron used to go, so you'd all pile into a bus, go down to the local train station, get on a train, 3rd class, straight down to the station at the other end, which I think the first one was Fairford, because I remember that's where Concorde was based, and we got off there and we actually went to see Concorde, but unfortunately was grounded due to an engine change. But we did meet Brian Trubshaw, who was the test pilot at the time, which is a memorable experience.
One of my abiding memories was RAF Lucas when I was a flight sergeant, which would have been in about 1969. That was the first camp we'd ever gone to where there was a girls' venture corps there as well. So as you can imagine, that was a wonderful camp.
My next camp was Rufus, New York. It was an old wartime dispersed station. Interesting thing to us about, to me about Rufus was a scrapyard. Down the side of the airfield, they had a load of scrap aircraft, burned and trashed aircraft. And there's one afternoon that there was 3 on them. And it was said, get what you want. It's yours. I managed to get a cockpit light out of Margate Meteor, which I've still got.
Engineering, police dogs, fire sections, out for the day, as well as what you would call the night exercise.
Lossiemouth is the one that sticks out in my mind just because it was the first one that I went to. It was a blues camp rather than a greens camp, so I get to run around in my blues uniform and pretend I was all big and important. And it was the first opportunity I got to visit a base, an actual base, and we were billeted on there, so we got to get involved with the full military life that goes on there. You know, eat in the mess and have your bunk rooms and things all together like a big holiday.
We had a look around in a Lancaster, actually flown air experience in an Anson of the Queen's Flight, which were phased out in before I joined the squadron. Stations where they've had lightning aircraft, which if you've ever seen a lightning take off, it literally is just a cockpit on top of an engine, and when it takes off it just goes vertically up, and that's a thrilling sight. But to be able to look close to those and touch them and sometimes even get in the cockpit. And at one camp, RAF Lucas, which I was mentioning, we actually got a flight in a Sea King helicopter as well, to be able to sit in there with the door open and see the flight sergeant sat with his legs outside and flying over the Tay and they're away. So some wonderful memories of some old-fashioned aircraft.
It was at one of these camps that 2214 Usworth Squadron Air Training Corps used the ancient northeast motto of Shy Ben's getting out to acquire a unique asset.
Basically down at Leeming, because we're in the 80s now, a civilian instructor was taking a party of cadets flying and happened to see the Vampire on the edge of the airfield, sad and forlorn, looking lost. He made certain inquiries and found out it was actually going to be scrapped and used for fire training, whereupon he made further inquiries, which eventually went to the base commander about, like, well, we could deal with that and make it a project. It went through to the CO, which at the time was Derek Crozier, and he arranged with the help of the RAF a transport of the whole aircraft to our compound, which came over the fence minus wings, and then they had to put it all back together again as a project.
Summer camps have long been a mainstay of the Air Training Corps activity. With the support of the Royal Air Force, these exciting adventures still take place today.
For some cadets, these opportunities to travel and broaden their horizons took them to places they could never have imagined. Dedication, ability, and long service bringing exciting rewards.
Well, I was one of the few cadets that actually joined at 14 and went right through to become an officer. So, yes, I had some successes. I mean, within 2 years of being a cadet, I was a corporal. A year later, I was a sergeant. A year later, I was a flight sergeant. A year later, I was a cadet warrant officer. And as a cadet warrant officer, because of my services to the squadron, I was actually awarded a trip to Singapore, which in 1963-64 was still a British protectorate. So there was an RAF base there, RAF Changi. And that for me, as a 20-year-old, I was 20 when I went out there, that was an incredible trip. You know, I was sent down to RAF Lynham, I was kitted out in KD, khaki drill uniform, so I thought I was, I thought it was one of the RAF personnel then. Boarded a Britannia turbojet flight, which took 26 hours to get from Lynham to Singapore. That was an experience as a 20-year-old. I'd never left the country before, so this was a tremendous experience with a couple of other cadets from other squadrons, and we were there for 4 days, stayed in the RAF guest house, which was gloriously named the RAF Changi Hotel, and spent the nights going down into Singapore, seeing the bumboats by the harbour and all the sights and smells.
More recently, 2214 Usworth Squadron has been represented at the 100th Nijmegen Marches in Holland.
It's 100 miles in 4 days, centering around the city of Nijmegen in Holland. Started in 1916 as the military to prove itself for the Dutch military. Civilians got involved in the next few years and eventually it became an international event. This year 55,000 people took part, including 8,000 military personnel, 800 of them from the British military. The cadets with the Air Training Corps and the Army Cadets go across every year and you take part in the marches. So it's 25 miles each day and you march in full military kit, and it's just about the mental power and the physical strength to get yourself across that finish line every day. But at the same time you're experiencing the festival that goes on around you. There's a festival that's built up around these marches, so the civilians are always there egging you on and giving you food and clapping and saying well done and all that kind of stuff, and it's an excellent feeling. I managed to finish it. It was the 100th anniversary, and Durham Northumberland Wing, it was the first time we've ever done it as a wing by ourselves. We joined up with North East Scotland Wing, and yeah, after about a year's worth of training and pain and crying and blood and sweat and tears, we finally managed to push ourselves across that finish line. During the marches, I just wanted to give up. I was in so much pain, and part of me was like, this isn't worth it. But when you get to the last 5 kilometres and you're marching all 800 British military personnel, 5 abreast, going across that finish line past His Royal Highness the King of the Netherlands, it's an excellent feeling.
Marksmanship, rifle and shotgun shooting is another mainstay of Air Cadet activity where responsibility and safety is paramount.
It's a discipline, it's a hobby. It's something that the ATC cadets really enjoy, and we offer them at budget rates. They're taken through all the safety rules and regulations, the do's, the don'ts of shotgun shooting. We also make sure they have a good day shooting, they enjoy it. Because a cadet that enjoys it wants to come back. If they don't enjoy it, they won't want to come back. There's something especially rewarding about hitting a moving target if you're into shooting, but you've got to understand the discipline. And there is a great deal of discipline behind it, and I believe it helps build character.
Back, I think it was July, it was the wing competition, shotgun competition. I won it, basically being the best shot in the wing. And well, since I have this title of being the best shot in the wing, I get a lot more harder things to do in clear pigeon shooting, like a lot more harder traps to shoot.
Personally, I look for the light bulb moment. I've always called it the light bulb moment. For instance, you take a cadet shooting. Since we're here, I'll use this as an example. You bring them shooting and they start off, they can't hit the barn door. They're missing, and all of a sudden they're twigging how to hit the clears, and the faces light up, and that's what I call a light bulb moment. And all of a sudden they can hit them and they walk away buzzing.
The sort of activities they can do, they can go shooting up to international competitions in Canada and South Africa. They can do gliding and go to solo. They can do pilot training. They can attend annual camps both in the UK and Germany. The Duke of Edinburgh scheme. Virtually any activity that's on offer we'll take part in, from archery to go-karting to any activity that will get kids knowing what they can achieve.
I'm in the Squadron band. I've done 3 wing commander parades. I've done the Battle of Britain in Durham, and I've been part of the Washington Heritage Festival.
We went out poppy selling in the galleries. We've been to a museum, making aeroplanes for the young kids, getting the word out.
I love to show people that I'm proud of the country, I'm proud of the Air Cadets.
I feel like I get a lot more respect when I'm wearing the uniform. I get asked loads of questions like whereabouts is the Air Cadets, how do I join, what age do I need to be, things like that generally, and what do I do. So I think I have got a few people in the Air Cadets by telling the parents what we do.
I've seen it from a cadet side in the modern day, then I've seen it as a senior NCO. So myself as a senior NCO now, I know what the cadets want, so I like to bring new things and that's what I wanted to do. Always teach the youngsters what I used to do.
The 75th anniversary of the Air Training Corps and of 2214 Usworth Squadron has coincided with the centenary commemorations surrounding the First World War. This presented yet another opportunity for the cadets to work closely with their neighbour, the Air Museum, and to learn more about their history.
Well, making a Morrison-Saulnier Type N bullet, which is the first actual fighter aircraft to have a machine gun to fire through the propeller. And we found a photograph of Claude Ridley, who comes from Sunderland, sitting in the cockpit of one when he was flying with number 60 Squadron in France in 1916. So we decided it would be a perfect aeroplane to build, a local connection, plus it's small enough to actually practically make. We looked at other local aeroplanes, but they tended to be very big, so the Morrison-Saulnier is very small, compact.
The paper templates have been stuck to this plywood, so that all we have to do really is to follow it around.
We're trying to get them to understand a little bit of aerodynamics, a little bit of engineering, and looking at engineering in the past and how it has developed to the modern sort of jet fighters of today. The Morrison-Saulnier is a sort of direct link of a fighter aeroplane, but the technology is a lot less. But again, during that, they've got to use skills to develop making jigs, develop hand skills in building the small parts, the wings, which they're doing. And hopefully they'll get them a lot more interested in the engineering aspects of aviation.
Today is to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Air Training Corps, the premier youth organisation in the country. We're going to have 500 cadets here with their staff that takes from Berwick down to Hartlepool and across to Hexham, and we've been joined by 4 other wings to support this day. The cadets love the public participation, but more importantly, we've got to be seen by the public. We're probably the best kept secret in the UK for a youth organisation, and we do such a fantastic job with changing young people's lives that this is an offering not only for the cadets to be on parade, but for the public to see us and know about us.
For 75 years, 2214 Usworth Squadron Air Training Corps has proudly carried its banner.
Through many changes and challenges, the squadron has evolved and flourished to continue offering unparalleled opportunities to those who seek adventure.
The excitement of looking forward to, genuinely looking forward to, every Tuesday and every Thursday going to the ATC and meeting up with my chums. A tremendous organisation for the camaraderie and the laughs.
It's something that lives with you forever.